Bummy. Hey everyone, just wanted to make a quick video about how I look at either stocks or ETFs and which ones hold which. I alluded to this a couple of days ago with my video that I made on momentum, and how I looked at, the big names that are in momentum and what other ETFs hold them and how to think about that. So I've been making this dashboard for GDX, which is the Gold Miners ETF. Okay, so I just wanted to point out something regarding the holdings, and obviously Keith talks about this quite a lot when he references and says like gold miners aren't gold. Okay, and I think there's another part internal which I'm going to try and explain here. Okay, so just in terms of the dashboard, the first thing you can notice is that Newmont is the only one which has 1 month and 3 month price momentum. Okay, and that's something I'm going to hit on and explain here. If we go to Newmont, is this updated? Yeah, okay, so let's just zoom in a little bit here. As you can see, it's made, using this chart, it made a string of 1 month highs, it pulled back, then it's made a lower and a lower, possibly here today. And you can see that here on the price chart. If we look at some others, Keith mentioned Barrick the other day on the macro show. This chart doesn't look like the Newmont chart. Okay. And this is the second biggest. So Newmont is the biggest holding in GDX, and Barrick is the second largest. Okay. So I've got GDX up here. Then if you look at the top 10 down here, okay. So Barrick is the second largest. The third is Franco-Nevada, which isn't a miner, it's a royalty company. So I'm not going to explain that here. Okay, so it's slightly different. It's not a digging stuff out of the ground. It's more like a financing type company of gold miners. It buys a stream of the gold that's coming out of the ground from other miners. Okay, and this chart as well also doesn't look like the Newmont chart. So this is where so obviously I've spotted this, and I know the answer already. Okay, but I'm going to show you, if you spot something out of the ordinary, like why is that one not acting like the rest? Okay, so the first thing I do is I always go to the ETFs, because they're such a massive thing. They're such a massive part. And anyone who's heard me on the notebook reviews that Robert runs on Twitter Spaces knows I'm a bit of a fanboy of Mike Green and the whole passive thing. And Hedgeye themselves, I think it's slide 4 on the macro themes deck, and it's shared in other places, is the chart showing the passive versus active assets under management. Okay, it's a massive part of it. So the first thing I always do is I always go to look at the ETFs. So I've got here, that's the GDX ETF and the top 10 holdings, which I've put into here. Now this is another ETF website, but the first thing you want to look, so Newmont is the top holding in GDX. Okay, but if you look at the other names that hold it, okay, you've got Vanguard, VU, which is obviously the SPY, well, yeah, I don't know what they are, but I know what they are. They're SPY ETFs. The SPY itself, IVV, XLB, which is the materials ETF. Okay. And if we look up here, so this is the total market cap of Newmont, so just over 48 billion, of which 8.5 billion, or 17% of the total float, is held by ETFs, and it's held by 123 ETFs. Okay. If we go to Barrick, which is the number 2 highest weighting in GDX, the market cap is, about, what shall we say, about 3/4 of Newmont at 33 billion. But only 1.5 billion of that is held by other ETFs, which only makes 4% of the total float. And it's only held by 7 ETFs. And what are those ETFs? The top holding is GDX, and I don't know what these are, but these certainly don't look like the SPY or SPY equivalents. Okay. The same goes for Franco-Nevada. 24 billion, so it's about half of Newmont, even though it's third weighting in GDX. Only 1 billion of it's held by ETFs, which is 4% of the total float. And again, some of these are going to be dividend type ETFs. I don't really know what they are, but they're not the same. Okay. So even just the top weighting here, as you can see by the price chart, Newmont is going to act more in line with SPY necessarily than the others, which will be much more correlated with the price of gold and what the gold miners ETF is doing. Okay. So it came up, I don't know, about 6 months ago on the Arena. I said, if you were going to hold a gold miner, which one would you own? Because if we think about the active versus passive question, then some of these, when I say smaller, they're $25 billion companies, but some of the smaller names are all going to be held by more active funds, not necessarily ETFs. Okay. Whereas Newmont is held by all the SPY ETFs because it's in the S&P 500. So if you were going to pick a gold miner, would you pick a gold miner for being a gold miner, or would you pick Newmont because it's held by 120 odd ETFs, which is linked to the SPY and the S&P 500? Okay. So I just wanted to highlight something that obviously this time I was looking at the price chart, and the trend, which is something completely different. Not completely different, sorry, but why is Newmont out of the ordinary to every other name on the list? All the rest of them are 50 odd days away from their last 3-month high. Okay. So yeah, not really deep and insightful, but just wanted to highlight something and why I always go outside. I always look at ETFs, which other ETFs hold names and why, and it becomes important when you start thinking about the different factors. When Keith talks about, high debt, high beta, low beta, quality, low quality, all those sorts of things, it will tell you what the market thinks of a name by what other ETFs hold it. In this case, it's pretty cut and dry that one is big enough to be in the S&P 500 and the others aren't. That's the main part. But you can do it in other ways. If you look down here and you see, okay, so in this case, materials, but if, I don't know, SDY, which is the dividend ETF, holds it, then that tells you something about how the market views that stock. Okay. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. Maybe it's not, but cheers guys. See you again soon.